Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Interesting hemp news segment. Election results out of Ohio and a few other cities. And standing by in the wings, Mr. John Cornett is ready to play some groovy tunes.
Yes, sir.
He's been playing a little bit for you. Right next to me is that wild and crazy guy, Mr. Casper Leach, with his crazy bow tie. And we'll bring on our equally crazy regular, our infamous dancing cannabis leaves. Da-da.
Feel the force.
All right, our first story tonight is the momentous election in Ohio. A majority of Ohio voters on Tuesday rejected Issue 3, the marijuana legalization amendment, which sought to establish a limited legal market for the commercial production and sale of marijuana to adults. Among the measure's more controversial provisions, however, was language limiting the issuance of commercial grow licenses to the initiative's financial investors and drafters. The controversial marijuana legalization initiative would have set aside all of the state's cultivation licenses for 10 of the drafters themselves. Issue 3 would have restricted commercial marijuana production to 10 properties owned by the principal investors in the initiative. While it remains clear that a majority of Ohioans support ending criminal marijuana prohibition for adults and patients in particular, the majority of the debate surrounding Issue 3 focused on provisions regarding the limited number of entities who would financially profit from this proposed market model. It's been clear for some time now that Americans want legal cannabis. It is also abundantly clear that most voters want a free market, not an artificially restricted one dictated by special interests to govern this emerging marketplace. Here in Portland, our own Representative Earl Blumenauer said, quote, "The defeat of the Ohio measure in no way slows down the revolution taking place across the country to end the failed marijuana prohibition." Many legalization supporters were skeptical the measure under consideration was the right approach in Ohio. I look forward to seeing more states join Oregon, Colorado, Washington, Alaska, and the District of Columbia in legalizing marijuana the right way, end quote. By contrast, voters in 2 Michigan cities, Keego Harbor and Portage, decided in favor of local ordinances eliminating minor marijuana possession penalties. So it's legal to possess up to an ounce there now. Next year, voters in numerous states, including Arizona, California, more on that in a minute, Maine, Massachusetts, and Nevada, will decide on ballot measures to regulate the production, use, and sale of cannabis to adults. Last week in Arlington, Virginia, Vermont Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders says that it's time to get the federal government out of the marijuana enforcement business by removing the substance from the U.S. Controlled Substances Act. The senator introduced legislation this week, Senate Bill 2237, to end Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2015. It's to deschedule cannabis from the federal anti-drug law. Speaking last week at George Mason University in Virginia, Senator Sanders called cannabis's present Schedule I status under federal law absurd. He added, quote, "In my view, the time is long overdue for us to remove the federal prohibition on marijuana. States should have the right to regulate marijuana the same way that states and local laws now govern the sale of alcohol and tobacco," end quote. Bernie Sanders also said that state-compliant marijuana operations, quote, "should be fully able to use the banking system without fear of federal prosecution," end quote. Senator Sanders' actions differ from those of Democratic opponent and former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, who promised to use the executive powers of the President of the United States to move marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 of the Controlled Substances Act. Republican candidate Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, has also co-sponsored federal legislation, Senate Bill 683, that seeks to reclassify cannabis to Schedule 2 under federal law. However, simply rescheduling marijuana from 1 to 2 would not limit the federal government's authority to prosecute marijuana offenders, including those that are in compliance with state law. While several other presidential candidates have called on the federal officials to respect states' marijuana policies, none have proposed amending federal marijuana laws, except for Sanders. And south of the border, the Mexican Supreme Court on Wednesday opened the door to legalizing marijuana, delivering a direct challenge to Mexico's harsh drug policies and adding to the debate in Latin America over the costs of the war on drugs. The Mexican Supreme Court vote by the court's criminal chamber declared that individuals should have the right to grow and distribute marijuana for personal use. The ruling applies only to a single cannabis club that brought the lawsuit and does not strike down Mexico's current drug laws. But, according to experts, it's likely the first in a wave of legal actions that ultimately could legalize marijuana in Mexico. The flow of drugs from Mexico to the United States continues after decades of an American-backed war on drugs that's produced much destruction and over 70,000 dead just over the last decade in the drug war in Mexico. The drug traffic fuels political corruption in Mexico, which remains engulfed in this violence. Peter Reuter, a University of Maryland expert on the global drug war and a senior economist at the RAND Corporation, said, quote, "It's the drama behind all of our efforts." Juan Torres Linda, a corporate lawyer who was one of the plaintiffs in the Supreme Court case, said, quote, "It's clearly a significant part of this business." The case ignited a debate about the effectiveness of incarcerating drug users. Mexico has some of the harshest drug laws in Latin America, while Uruguay in 2013 legalized marijuana, and Chile gathered its first harvest of medical marijuana this year. In Brazil, the Supreme Court recently debated the decriminalization of marijuana, cocaine, and other drugs. Many Latin American leaders, including Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos, have called for a shift in the war on drugs. Though Santos is one of America's closest allies in Latin America, he's pointed out the hypocrisy of jailing poor farmers for growing marijuana while it's been legalized in the United States. Armando Santa Cruz, another plaintiff in the Mexico case, said, quote, "We're killing ourselves to stock the production of something that is heading to the U.S. where it's legal," end quote. Wednesday's ruling was the result of an effort to change the drug law by 4 members of a leading Mexican anti-crime group, Mexico United Against Crime. Torres Landa Santa Cruz formed a cannabis club with 2 other people, the Mexican Society for Responsible and Tolerant Consumption, which is a Spanish acronym for SMART. The group applied for a license from Mexico's drug regulatory agency, but as expected was turned down. Their appeal of that decision is the case that reached the Supreme Court. For legal marijuana to become the law of the land in Mexico, the court's criminal chamber will have to rule the same way 5 times, or 8 of the 11 members of the full Mexican Supreme Court will have to vote in favor of it. A little farther north, south of us still, in the land of California, uber-wealthy billionaire and Silicon Valley fixture Sean Parker, the co-founder of Napster and former Facebook president, is backing a new initiative that would make marijuana legal for non-medical use in California. Introduced this week, the Control, Regulate, and Tax Adult Use of Marijuana Act would make it legal for people 21 and older to possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana and grow up to 6 plants at home. The state would collect a 15% sales tax on sales in addition to taxing growers. Part of the money would fund anti-drug programs for kids. Supporters estimate legalization could bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes a year. Now the group needs to gather the required hundreds of thousands of signatures in order to get the proposition on the ballot in 2016. It'll compete with similar initiatives for a spot on the ballot, but the new act already has some major advantages. Parker brings a big name, respected supporters, and lots of cash. Forbes magazine estimates Parker is worth $2.5 billion. The LA Times has reported that Parker has already contributed millions of dollars to this initiative, so it seems quite likely it'll be up for a vote in California next year. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, A pro-marijuana coalition called New Approach Missouri filed an initiative petition last week to get a proposed constitutional amendment on the 2016 ballot to legalize cannabis for medicinal use. The new proposal initiative may replace a broader initiative proposal already approved by the Secretary of State that would have legalized marijuana for adult use as well, reports the St. Louis Public Radio. The group Show Me Cannabis is ending its broader legalization proposal because polling showed it would be challenging for voter approval for recreational legalization. But polls show Missouri voters are likely to overwhelmingly support medical marijuana. Our last story tonight is from the Mideast. Iran has an image as a hardline conservative nation, but drug policy is one of the areas in which the Islamic Republic has paradoxically progressive policies. During a recent conference on addiction held in Tehran, a prominent Iranian official outlined what could become alternative to the country's current drug policy, including the legalization of cannabis and opium. Saeed Sefatian is the head of the Working Group on Drug Demand Reduction in the Council for the Discernment of the Expediency of the State, the Emergency Expediency Council in Iran, which plays a critical role in national drug policy. All Iranian drug laws are discussed and voted on in the parliament except for drug laws, which are both discussed and legislated by this Expediency Council. Iranian lawmakers managed to get the council's approval in early 2000 for a controversial progressive set of harm reduction measures. These include the nationwide distribution of clean syringes to stop the spread of disease among intravenous drug users, and methadone substitution treatment, measures which were unthinkable to implement in other Islamic countries, as well as in many Western nations. After a decade of harm reduction policies, Iran has more than 6,000 methadone clinics and numerous programs of support and assistance to drug users. Sefatian said the government needs to manage all areas of drug policy, including the cultivation, production, supply, and consumption of cannabis and opium. He suggested the reintroduction of the cultivation of opium, poppies, and cannabis under specific circumstances outlined in ad hoc laws. For instance, only in private places, only for opium, not heroin, and only for adults. Cannabis and opium are both indigenous plants in Iran and have a long history of use there. Between 60 and 70% of Iran's current prison inmates are incarcerated for drug-related offenses, so a reform in the drug policy could drop the prison population remarkably. The state would receive tax benefits from the previously illegal sector. The economy and the agricultural sector would benefit greatly from opium and cannabis cultivation. If successful, Iran could become a model for other countries, especially in the Middle East and North Africa. That's the end of our hemp news segment for tonight. Mr. John Cornett is standing by to bring us some more groovy tunes.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
I'm ready. Excuse me for saying I'm ready for out and out ending prohibition. I know it's about the stepping stones getting there, but I'm just so tired of the government telling me that they gotta monitor how much I use or anything like that. I'm just sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
Here I stand, head in hand, turn my face to the wall. If she's gone, I can't go on, feeling 2 foot small. Everywhere people stare, each and every day, I can hear them laugh at me, and I hear them say, Let me hear you say, hey, you got to hide your love away. Hey, you got to hide your love away. For you, Casper.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
I'm a big Beatles fan too. Love those guys.
That was Paul McCartney's first boy band.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. And then he joined the band with his wife, Wings. Wouldn't call that a second boy band, but okay. Hey, it is the 6th of November, and if you're watching us on the 6th of November, 2015, you can call us. If you have a question about marijuana, whether it's about marijuana prohibition, ending marijuana prohibition, the laws and regulations here in Oregon for marijuana, medical marijuana, the laws in Washington, the laws in other states, or about industrial hemp. We're quite the hempsters here too. So you can call us if you're interested at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442.
I have a question, Paul.
All right.
Why is it that the head of the Drug Justice Department said that medical marijuana is a joke?
Because he's a joke.
But did you see that in the news?
I did. It's
Doesn't
pretty
that-
outrageous. I see
Doesn't that fly in the
patients
face
who,
of everything that we're learning?
yeah, patients who it stops the progression of neurodegenerative diseases. It allows them to function, given serious medical conditions. I'm looking at a few medical patients right now that I'm sure no one would doubt need medical
Well, he's
marijuana.
a learned individual who's in an important...
I don't know about that. I mean, for him to say something like that.
He's in an important position of power. You would think that anything that he said has been thoroughly researched and honest to God true.
You would. It's
But
a
he's-
shame.
So are
It's
we
a crying
wrong?
shame.
I'm
No.
starting to doubt myself.
No. Cannabis helps all those conditions listed right there, whether it's chronic pain, seizure disorders, gastrointestinal ailments, neurodegenerative diseases, helps cure cancer. It helps bone formation, stops osteoporosis. It's almost incredible. And so
Well, then after the show, I'll smoke a joint and calm down and let it help me with my depression then.
I'll watch you do that.
Groovy.
As I fill my vaporizer. We do that, Anyway, we have a video from Ohio that talks about the momentous initiative there. I think this one is from Bloomberg News. Is that video ready to roll?
Did you notice that it's got the word "hi" in the middle of its name?
No.
Oh, hi. Oh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hi. Oh.
Right. You think they would go, oh, hi. Oh, let's legalize.
But they don't.
They don't.
Is that video ready?
This week, voters just said no to legalizing pot. They rejected a ballot measure that would have legalized both recreational and medical marijuana use. Had the measure passed, Ohio would have joined 23 other states and the District of Columbia in legalizing marijuana in some form or another. Now, while Ohio has closed the door on legal pot for now, Mexico's Supreme Court is opening it. The top court has granted permission to 4 people to grow cannabis for their own consumption. For more on the ruling, I want to bring in Victor Michel in Merida, Mexico. He's a reporter with Bloomberg's partner in Mexico, El Financiero. Victor, what exactly did the court decide, and how is that going to impact the Mexican drug industry?
Hi, Betty. Yes, some are calling this Mexico's Green Day +1 because as the decision made yesterday by the Mexican Supreme Court, basically what's going to happen is now that we're going to have a big discussion in this country about what do we want to do with marijuana. The court decided that 4 people, we're talking about 2 corporate lawyers, a businessman, and a social activist, will be allowed to grow and consume marijuana without facing federal charges. Now, having said that, this is limited. Yes, this is only a start. But basically what Mexican law states is that if 4 more people present several suits or similar suits before the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court rules in the same way as they did with these 4 people, then we would be talking about a new federal law here in Mexico. This would be a legal precedent. Marijuana for recreational purposes would be legal in the whole country. So this is just the beginning. We could say that Mexico started down a road that might take us in a year or so into full-blown legalization. This is something that would have been unthinkable some months ago.
Victor, this would be a watershed moment if this does become the law of the land for Mexico. So what kind of an impact could that have on the drug gangs, on the violence in Mexico, Victor?
Yes, the drug war has led this country to do a lot of soul searching. We have to remember that we're talking about 70,000, maybe 100,000 people killed ever since the federal government launched this offensive against the drug cartels. Now, having said that, and remembering that the drug cartels make earnings something like $1.5 billion a year by producing and commercializing marijuana, we have to remember that the Mexican drug cartels have diversified. They are now looking into heroin. They're now looking into methamphetamines. They are now looking into stolen gasoline. So, yes, this will hurt them, but it will not be a massive impact into their incomes because their incomes have gone into other areas, basically heroin and meth. That's where they're getting their money from at this point.
All right. And the president himself, Mexico's president, what is his stance on legalizing marijuana, Victor?
Yes, he has been very critical of this, of the decision made yesterday by the federal Supreme Court here in Mexico. There was a press conference minutes after the Supreme Court ruling by the president's legal chief advisor. And what he said was basically, he tried to warn the Mexican public that marijuana is not legal at this point, that it's only legal for these 4 people we were talking about. He was very emphatic that Mexico at this point is not advocating for the legalization of marijuana. The federal government here in Mexico has been following the guidelines set by the federal government in the U.S., basically being very critical of marijuana. Now, having said that, most probably we will see in the coming months more legal challenges to the current federal laws here in Mexico. It's anybody's guess what might happen, but one thing is for sure, the Mexican federal government is not happy by what was decided yesterday by the Supreme Court.
But we are.
Yes, we are.
We're happy with what the Mexican Supreme Court said, and so we hope you are as well. If you have a question or comment for us tonight, call that number on your screen. I understand a couple callers are said to be standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
How you guys doing?
Pretty well. How are you?
Good, good. We're calling in from Western Mass, actually.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, watching your show, and just want to have a few questions for you guys.
Go right ahead.
All right, so what's in store in 2016 for the industrial hemp industry?
Well, they're here in the United States, it's expanding. Several growers in Kentucky and in Oregon were able to grow and keep their seed this year. That's a first. However, there's no real market in the United States. Meanwhile, up in Canada, the Canadian growers can't keep up with demand for hemp seed, and so American farmers need to step into that market. However, we're not quite there yet in terms of farmers having access to seed and access to a market yet. So it'll continue to expand. Just this week on Wednesday here in Oregon, the Oregon State University, which is one of the land grant colleges that the United States government has funded for agriculture, has said that changes made to the U.S. Farm Bill this year allow research to start on industrial hemp. And so we've run into some roadblocks in graduate study programs and research for industrial hemp. So hopefully these changes will make an impact and let the universities move forward to implement further research.
That's wow, that's a lot. Thank you very much. Actually, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
I just want to know the FDA's stance on CBD right now. I know that, if there's any going to be change to it at all. I know that there's some issues right now.
There's a lot of talk about hemp seed oil. So you've got to clarify that hemp seed oil is a nutritious food product that you can get in most health food stores or order online. And that a lot of people confuse that with CBD oil or THC oil. CBD and THC oil are extracted from the main part of the plant, mainly the flowers. Sometimes some of it can be extracted from the leaves as well. But so there are these different products. Hemp seed oil itself doesn't contain these cannabinoids. It has essential fatty acids, and it's also the most productive seed oil that can be cultivated. So we're looking forward to further research into production of hemp seed oil here in the United States, particularly without the restrictions on THC content. What's happened is the government has regulated THC content, which lowers the ability of hemp to produce flowers. So by limiting THC content, they limit flower productions, and that limits seed oil production. So we need to see the ability of farmers to choose varieties of cannabis without regard to its THC content, but according to the ones that produce the most and best seed oil, protein, and fiber. And so that's an extrapolated answer, but the FDA, unfortunately, hasn't really stepped into the argument much.
All right, well, thank you very much, guys, and good luck.
You're welcome. We have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Calling from Portland. Hey, I got a quick question for you guys.
Okay.
Hey, so how effective is drinking cannabis tea for treating, stomach issues, joint pains? How effective is that rather than smoking it if you're not wanting to get really super high?
There's a lot of variation, and there's different people have different reactions to different cannabinoids, and there's a variety of different things in cannabis tea and cannabis oils. There's a blend of terpenes or aromatic hydrocarbons that give it its flavor. There's THC, which is one of the cannabinoids in the flowers most responsible for the high. There are several other cannabinoids like CBD and CBC, and each of those are present in different amounts, and different people react different ways to it. But I would definitely give it a try. I've heard some people juice the fresh leaves and drink that fresh juice, kind of like wheatgrass juice. But I can't tell you exactly how effective it is for you, but it's been shown to be effective for a lot of different people. But there's a lot of variation from variety to variety.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Have a good night. If you're out there and you have a question for us tonight, you can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. So, Casper.
Yes, sir.
So how's your life in online podcast Roku land been this week?
We've been having a lot of fun letting the whole world know how important it is to end prohibition. Skunk Magazine started their program this week. And, of course, Mark Emery's doing his show now, making a point to tune in.
What's he call that? Cannabis Culture?
He calls it Cannabis Culture Radio Hour. And he had Jody on this past week. They had some exciting victories up in Canada that they are sharing with the world. So we've been having a lot of fun. We've been doing specials as well on the Time for Hemp weekly series. And we've got Wolf, who's been doing Farmer in the Sky. He's putting together some more specials for the end of December. So making a point to check out his programming as well. So thank you for asking and allowing me to do a shameless plug for the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network at timeforhemp.com.
We have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Hi, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Very well.
Hi, hello.
How
Hi.
can we answer your question or comment?
I was just wondering, how healthy is cannabis for the lungs?
Well, smoking anything has, you're putting things in your lungs that probably, if you're smoking, something shouldn't be there. There are these combustion byproducts. And so people who are pulmonary or lung experts have been studying cannabis, and they found, though, that cannabis does not cause cancer. In fact, it's shown to lower incidences of lung cancer among smokers. So even though, tobacco smokers have a marked increase in lung cancers, marijuana smokers have less lung cancer than people who never smoked anything at all.
Hey.
However, they have bronchitis if they are regular marijuana smokers over a long period of time. I prefer to vaporize myself, so when you vaporize, there are no combustion byproducts, and you're getting all the terpenes and cannabinoids, and those are powerful antioxidants that are very healthy for the lungs.
And Jack Harris says on my television show, you can find it on the YouTube channels as well, where Jack Harris took time for hemp, and it does add to the elasticity of your lungs. And those people who smoke marijuana and tobacco don't live as long as people who just smoke marijuana, because marijuana not only adds to the elasticity of your lungs, it helps your blood flow through your body, and it also helps you to calm down from stress diseases. So they found that people who smoke marijuana and nothing else actually live longer than people who refrain from smoking anything at all.
Oh, okay. I understand now. That was very helpful.
All right, well, thanks for the question. Anything else? No? I guess we have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, hi. Hey, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
A couple days ago on the local news, they were claiming that the Portland power companies are having trouble with their transformers because so many people are using electricity. They're blowing out the transformers. So many people are using electricity for growing their 4 plants. And I'm thinking 4 plants doesn't need that much electricity or lights, do they?
That's right. 4 plants doesn't need that much. I think you'd have to have a lot more power usage than 1,000 watt bulb. I mean, that's 1,000 watt bulb is less than some space heaters use.
I saw that report. They stated that an average grow room uses the equivalent to 20 refrigerators a day.
But I don't think it's the tiny home growers for personal use that are blowing out the transformers. I think it's the indoor cultivators trying to meet demand for, right now medical marijuana growers are the only suppliers for the recreational dispensaries out there right now. And so I think you're just, I don't think we're seeing people just growing 4 plants, but more like people growing 24 plants or 100 plants and using 20 or 30 lights. Those are the ones that are blowing out their transformers.
Well, and
I've seen that happen, actually. I've seen a transformer get blown out because of a power imbalance. You've got to, when you're using so much power, the lights tend to pull a very heavy load, and the load has to be balanced because it's a alternating current. So if the load isn't balanced between the alternating poles, it can blow out those transformers.
And a lot of growers now are going to LED lights, so they're finding other ways to conserve energy. And there's been a problem, too, with growers, they say, are taking a large amount of water from the reserves that are desperately needed for drought areas.
But that's in, prohibition areas where it's not for legal gardens, it's for the illegal gardens in the forest.
But what I wanted to share was that a lot of these growers now are using fish tanks and their hydroponics as well. So they're finding a way to do recycling, and
the fishes can feed the plants.
The growing industry is finding ways to take care of these challenges that are now coming into this new industry, the growing marijuana industry.
I really think we've got to go outdoors and stop large-scale cultivation indoors. The environmental effects of recreating the wind and the sun indoors are definitely not sustainable. The big grow bulb in the sky that we call the sun is the best for agriculture. But
well, I don't think I've ever seen plants as big indoors as you get outdoors.
Yep, we can get them a lot bigger outdoors, but we start them indoors too to get
You
them
do,
that big,
but
yeah.
when you take them outdoors and let them enjoy the sunshine of Mother Nature, they get to be, how about 10, 15, 20 feet tall?
They do. They do. We have another caller, though. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
The CBD is the ingredient for pain.
Yeah,
correct?
it's the primary, and it seems to counteract some of the effects of THC in terms of its psychoactive effects.
Now, is the leaf where the CBD comes from and THC comes from the flower?
You know, CBD can be found in both THC and CBD are found mainly in the flower. You can find both in the leaf, a little bit more CBD than THC, but you can find both in the leaf. But both of them are in higher concentrations in the flowers and the resin that the flowers extrude to protect themselves from radiation and bugs.
So the Rick Simpson oil and all that stuff, the crackle or whatever it's all called, is that made from the entire the flower and the leaf, or is it just
mainly the flower? The best RSO, Rick Simpson oil, some people call it Phoenix Tears. I call it high cannabinoid cannabis oil. The best high cannabinoid cannabis oil comes from the best flowers.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good
You're
night.
welcome. We're seeing an influx of cancer patients and other patients from around the world coming here to Oregon to take advantage of our low-cost cannabis in comparison to the rest of the places in the United States. And it's heartbreaking to see what some of these people have been put through to come out here to try to get their cannabis oil. And it's also heartbreaking to see our legislature trying to limit these people's ability to come here and get that help. So hopefully we'll see moves in the legislature to retract some of the restrictions that they're imposing on out-of-state residents for medical marijuana. Right now, new laws go into effect starting March 1st that won't allow out-of-state patients to get medical marijuana permits. We hope that the short session of the Oregon legislature that happens in February will see fit to change that, but time remains to tell on that.
Didn't you tell me when I first moved here that a person can be in the state for 24 hours and declare themselves a citizen of the state of Oregon?
You can be a resident once you get a place to live and a couple utility bills in your name, and
so you can
your
have
local
your
driver's
medical
license. You're a
marijuana
resident,
card?
and you can get a card. But right now, until March 1st anyway, out-of-state residents can still get medical marijuana cards.
Nice.
Hopefully, we'll see that continue. It was the Oregon Supreme Court that ruled that out-of-state citizens could obtain medical marijuana cards in Oregon, and we might have to go back to the court again, but we're willing to do that. We have another caller standing by, about 8.5 minutes left here. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi. Paul, I was wondering, now that we've legalized marijuana in the state, are they going to expand the things to get a card, like instead of cancer and stuff?
They should. However, in the last legislative session, the legislators in Oregon and in the last legislative session in Washington took moves to curtail and put greater restrictions on medical marijuana. In fact, some of the dispensaries in Washington pushed for the elimination of the medical marijuana system in Washington and the radical change in that. And so we've seen some of the potential recreational, who we call green rush, greed profiteers want to limit medical marijuana, but it should be freer, and I think eventually we'll see an expansion of medical marijuana. The fee here in Oregon that the state charges is just outrageous. They charge $200 a year for most people. They have a reduced fee structure for some, but it's way too high a fee, and the service that they provide, it takes them 2 months to issue a card. When I go to DMV, my license is good for 8 years, and they give it to me right there.
Exactly. Yeah. And, like if you were going to get a prescription for Vicodin or something, you don't need a special card to enable you to get that prescription as you do for marijuana.
Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't have to have some special state permit. You know, things are going to keep changing. We see changes even now in the alcohol and liquor laws in all these different jurisdictions around the country. We're going to see a constant calibration of these laws as we remove some of these stigma surrounding the use of medical marijuana, as it becomes well known that cannabis oil has the potential to replace petroleum, and when we allow it to do it, we'll see a profound change in the energy industry and the wood pulp paper industry, and world hunger will be eliminated once we allow farmers to cultivate hemp for fiber, fuel, food, and medicine without restrictions based on THC. Then we'll see the real science come out about these things.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your call.
Bye.
So what do you think about that Ohio vote? You used to be a neighbor to Ohio when you lived in Indiana, right?
I think it was the right thing to do. The press keeps saying that people in Ohio voted against marijuana, and that's not true. What they voted against was a monopoly on marijuana in their state.
Did you see that crazy character they had? They had this character called Buddy, some green bud guy that looked like a kind of a cross between a Scooby-Doo villain and a watermelon or something. And they had this Buddy go around to college campuses, and you know, the fact that it would have limited the cultivation to just 10 wealthy backers who spent about $30 million to try to get it passed was, hey, there's Buddy.
Hey, rock on.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't run into him.
But that's what Ohioans voted against, was the monopoly
Thank goodness.
being held by 10 people. They do want medical marijuana. They do want industrial hemp. They do want to see the end to arrest. They just don't want to have the same mistakes that befell Washington State.
Washington's is really messed up.
Be their nightmare as well. So they've learned that if you don't like it, don't hold your nose and vote for it. Just try better the next time around. What I think is inspiring is that we've been saying for 20 years that truth will trump lies, love will conquer hate. And the DEA dug its heels in and kept grasping at straws, spewing out hate, spewing out lies. And we kept standing strong, and we refused to turn our backs. And now the DEA and all their little cronies are getting lost in the dark of lies. And the sunshine of truth and light and love is finally coming out, and dominoes are falling left and right. I'm serious. You cannot hold back what needs to be given to the people, and that is this plant. We need it to help this planet. We need it to help our future, for our children to have jobs and to have a strong economy. We need to have a healthy body. And for somebody to stay in a dark room someplace and put out lies about how this is going to destroy us, well, it's nice to see finally that all your lies are being swept aside by the truth and the light of love of the Ganja Goddess. Thank you, Paul.
We need to expand natural individual rights, limit corporate and governmental rights, and hopefully cannabis is just one of the steps down that path toward greater freedom and freedom of consciousness and the ability to think the thoughts and live our lives the way we see fit without the government interfering in adults' damaging activities, you know. So we are constantly trying to help patients all across the United States. So if you have a loved one or someone you know who needs medical marijuana, whether it be for cancer or neurodegenerative diseases, gastrointestinal ailments, chronic pain, spasms, we have doctors who can help you all across the United States. If you need our help, you can have them call us toll free at 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you're here in Portland, Oregon, you can call us locally at 503-281-5100. That's 503-281-5100. We have a portal where you can get to our website, and it is hemp.org. That's HEMP.org. Our political website is CRRH. And for more information about marijuana, you can call us at 503-235-4606. we're down to about a minute left. You want to give one more plug for time for
There
Hemp Radio?
I want to remind people that there is one other thing that is more powerful in the world of medicine than ganja goddess, than cannabis, and that is comedy. Laughter is also a key to good health. So I would encourage you to fire up a good joint. Go to timeforhemp.com. Find a comedy this weekend and share some time with someone that you love, letting them know how important it is to end prohibition.
All right. Thank you, Casper. We're going to go out with more great music from John Cornette. Thanks, John. Thanks, Casper. Thanks, viewers. Remember, help us restore hemp. Good night.
So smooth, really get you in the mood. When you heard of the word is coming down. All you kids in Oregon, you like them funny cigarettes. Kids in Oregon like them funny cigarettes.